she's been caught lying. I mean, that's really the thing. Like, the thing about the breastfeeding is a great example. Like, he walked into my trailer and me breastfeeding, and then his side produced the text message of her being like, yeah, you can come to my trailer. FYI, I'm breastfeeding, but it's fine.
And by the way, Blake is hurting other women. Every time someone this high profile lies about you set the rest of real victims back. So her.
Yeah.
Her.
So I just think she's in trouble. That all she's left with is that sad little piece of her claim.
Megyn Kelly just dropped the hammer on Blake Lively, and she didn't use a teleprompter to do it. She looked straight into the camera and called out the actress for a blatant lie that's now being backed up by cold, hard evidence. We're talking about a specific incident where Blake claimed Justin Baldoni walked into her trailer while she was breastfeeding, making her feel violated. But then the receipts surfaced. A text message from Blake herself telling Justin it was fine to come in, even mentioning the breastfeeding as a total non-issue. Megyn didn't just call it a mistake, she called it a calculated move to destroy a man's career. The narrative is officially crumbling.
Justin Baldoni.
Control of his movie from him. She had made him go downstairs in the basement for the premiere of his movie. She had been threatening him. He understood full well that his career was probably done because she was such a bully.
The courtroom victory for Justin Baldoni was the first major crack in the wall. A federal judge just dismissed 10 major claims that Blake Lively had submitted against him, essentially gutting her legal strategy. For months, the public was led to believe that Baldoni was a manipulative director who made the set a toxic environment for everyone involved. But when the judge looked at the actual facts, the majority of those allegations simply didn't hold water. It turns out that having a massive PR machine doesn't mean you have a winning case. This legal setback is being viewed as a total humiliation for a star who thought she could use the courts to silence a creative rival once and for all.
It's got more humiliation waiting for her if they actually do go to court.
Megyn Kelly isn't just reporting on this. She's leading the charge against what she calls a Hollywood bully. She pointed out how Blake tried to use the power of her fame and the massive influence of her husband, Ryan Reynolds, to push Justin Baldoni into a fetal position. According to Kelly, the actress essentially tried to hijack the movie from its rightful director, forcing him into the basement during his own premiere. It wasn't just a professional disagreement, it was a systematic attempt to crush a man's reputation because he dared to stand his ground. Megyn made it clear that being a wealthy elite doesn't give you a free pass to treat people like lower-level employees.
True.
She decided she wanted to take over and use the power of her fame and name and that of her husband, Ryan Reynolds, to bully Justin Baldoni into the fetal position.
Kelly made it very...
The comparison Megyn Kelly made next was the one that really set the internet on fire. She explicitly compared Blake Lively's behavior to that of Amber Heard, noting that both women allegedly attempted to use the mainstream media to portray themselves as victims when the facts suggested the opposite. Just like the high-profile Depp Heard trial, this situation involves a powerful figure operating PR campaigns from behind the scenes to manipulate public perception. Megyn argued that every time a high-profile woman lies about these types of incidents, it sets real victims back. It's a stinging criticism that labels Blake's actions as a disaster, not just for her, but for women everywhere.
Disaster for her to unleash this PR campaign against him, which, by the way, Brian Friedman told us she started. She was the one through her PR agent who was dropping negative stories about Justin, not the other way around. She played with fire, and now she got burned. This isn't going to end well for you, Blake.
But the drama doesn't stop with Blake. Ryan Reynolds is deep in the trenches of this controversy as well. It's been revealed that Ryan pushed himself into the production of the film despite having no official role in it. He reportedly went behind Baldoni's back to change an entire scene, a move that showed a complete lack of respect for the creative director. Justin eventually found out, but the message was clear. Blake and Ryan don't ask for permission, they just take what they want. This power couple apparently treated the director of the film as a nuisance rather than a partner, operating under the assumption that their combined wealth and fame made them the ultimate authorities.
Everyone in this room, because you're here, I know this about you.
Perhaps the most damaging piece of evidence is the now infamous Khaleesi text. In a private message that leaked to the public, Blake compared herself to the Mother of Dragons from Game of Thrones. She didn't stop there, though. She referred to her husband Ryan Reynolds and her billionaire best friend Taylor Swift as her dragons, implying they were weapons she could fire off at anyone who crossed her. This isn't the language of a friend or a partner. It's the language of someone who views their inner circle as tools for intimidation. Megyn Kelly highlighted this text as proof of a god complex, showing that Blake views herself as a queen who can unleash fire on her enemies.
Social media influencers who are just starting out their online careers who have no money and wouldn't know the first place to call to get a lawyer who could defend them on this kind of a subpoena that comes from these powerful law firms who then are trying to, in an attempt to...
While Blake was busy texting about dragons, her legal team was busy attacking regular people. In a move described as petty as it gets, Blake's lawyers issued multiple subpoenas to dozens of social media influencers. Most of these people were just ordinary individuals with small followings who were sharing their opinions on the case. They weren't journalists or big-time media moguls. They were just regular people talking about what they saw. Blake's team demanded access to their private communications and sources, a move Megyn Kelly described as a clear attempt to intimidate them into silence. They wanted to use the fear of bankruptcy to make critics disappear.
By the way, like, just the obvious infringement, just because you're a social media influencer doesn't mean that you don't have a First Amendment protection in dealing with sourcing, which she's trying to probe at. She wants to know people's sources and see communications with sources. Just the overreach and, again, the bullying nature of it is a...
Megyn Kelly had a very direct message for Blake's expensive lawyers. Try it. She publicly challenged the legal team, stating that while they might be able to scare off influencers who can't afford a lawyer, they wouldn't be able to intimidate her. Kelly made it clear that she has the resources and the will to fight back in court, and she would take great pleasure in spending money to expose their tactics. It was a moment of pure defiance that showed Blake's intimidation game only works when the target is too poor to fight back. When someone with actual power pushes back, the whole strategy of legal bullying starts to look incredibly weak and desperate.
So petty, to your point, and it's so driven by PR people and their kind of nonsense calculations that that to me is what's driving this, and not so much.
One of the shadiest parts of this entire story involves a mysterious shell company called Vanson Inc. Investigators discovered that this company had been dissolved back in 2013, but was suddenly brought back to life just months before Blake Lively filed her lawsuits. Even more suspicious is the address listed for Vanson Inc. It's the same address used by Ryan Reynolds. This wasn't some independent entity. It was a tool being used by the couple to mask their involvement in legal actions against their critics. Using a dormant company to hunt down the identities of internet users is a tactic straight out of a corporate thriller, and it's left a massive paper trail.
There's zero basis for this. There's zero good faith basis to allege this.
Fair enough.
You'd have to have a tip, like, hey, I heard that, Joe Schmo is getting paid by Baldoni for the... The
reason they needed this shell company was simple. They wanted revenge. Blake and Ryan were reportedly obsessed with finding out the real names of people criticizing them online. Usually, a judge has to sign off on a Jane Doe lawsuit to ensure it isn't just a fishing expedition to harass regular people. However, reports indicate that Blake's team tried to skip this step, filing their actions without the proper judicial review. It shows a level of arrogance that is truly staggering. They couldn't conceive of a world where people could dislike them, so they assumed there must be a conspiracy, and they were willing to break the rules to prove it.
You're up against it now, sweetheart, because I will fight you. I will fight. I'll spend tons of money. It'll be my pleasure to spend tons of money fighting you and turning you into a loser.
Well, Megyn Kelly stood music.
The scheme really started to fall apart when Ryan Reynolds panicked. As the dirty work of Vanson Inc. began to come to light, Ryan suddenly registered himself as the CEO of the company. It was a desperate attempt to make the entity look like a legitimate business with proper governance instead of a weapon for a PR war. But the timing told the real story. You don't resurrect a dead company and then suddenly name yourself the head of it unless you're trying to cover your tracks. This coordinated attack by the Hollywood power couple is being described by critics as a mafia-style move intended to censor anyone who didn't follow their scripted narrative.
Thursday, a federal judge dismissing most of the harassment claims tied to the 2024.
This isn't the first time Blake Lively has been accused of being a real-life mean girl. To understand the current drama, you have to look back at her time on Gossip Girl. For years, rumors circulated that she made the set a nightmare for her co-stars. The most famous feud was with Leighton Meester, who played Blair Waldorf. While their characters were best friends, the reality was much colder. Reports suggest Blake was jealous of Leighton's wardrobe and storylines, creating a toxic environment for everyone. There's even a cringeworthy interview where Blake mocked Leighton's mother for being in prison, making a joke about Leighton being born in a cage.
The work that I did on screen was easier than the work that I did off screen in this movie because of all that went into it. So I really look at I love a challenge though, and I'm just so proud of every bit of it. We went through a whole roller coaster of the human experience, and I'm very
The patterns of behavior are starting to look very consistent. Even Penn Badgley, who dated Blake in real life during the show's run, reportedly had a difficult relationship with her. Blake even admitted in an old interview that she worked to put the rest of the cast against him. If she was willing to manipulate her colleagues and her own boyfriend when she was just starting out, it's not hard to imagine how those habits evolved once she became one of the most powerful women in Hollywood. Megyn Kelly pointed out that these historical conflicts aren't just gossip. They are evidence of a long-term strategy of alienation and control that has defined Blake's career.
SLAMS Inc. is a corporation that was dissolved in 2013. If you guys see below there, it says dissolution date, January 2nd, 2013. More importantly, Vanzant Inc. is registered at this address, the address of Ryan Reynolds.
One of the most offensive claims Megyn Kelly addressed was what she called stolen valor. Blake allegedly tried to use her mother's past experiences to gain sympathy during the Me Too movement, casting herself in the glow of a victim to gain public support. Kelly called her a faker and a glommer, arguing that using someone else's trauma to bolster a PR campaign is the ultimate low. By framing her professional dispute with Justin Baldoni as a gendered issue of safety and comfort, Blake was accused of undermining real victims who actually face those dangers. It was a calculated attempt to use a social movement as a shield for her own ego.
So pathetic that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds put together this BS lawsuit about how people are trying to manipulate public perception because their egos cannot even conceive of a world where anybody could dislike them, when in reality, they're the ones manipulating public perception by censoring people.
While Blake tried to rally her Hollywood friends to her side, the silence from the industry was deafening. Sure, a few people like her sister or close associates stood by her, but many of her famous peers stayed quiet. They could see through the PR games and didn't want to get dragged down with a sinking ship. Some stars even started subtly supporting the other side. Jamila Jamil was seen interacting with content that mocked Blake's deposition, and Kate Beckinsale spoke out about her own experiences with being gaslit and ostracized on sets. It seems the Hollywood community is finally tired of the manipulation tactics used by the elite power couples.
Blake Lively, throughout the course of this litigation, issued subpoenas to several social media platforms, but they sought the information of hundreds of people's private information without notice.
Even the media world is seeing whistleblowers emerge. James Bataska, a reporter for the Daily Mail, was initially part of the machine receiving information favorable to Blake's side. However, he eventually spoke out about the ethical concerns he observed. He realized that the information being fed to him by Blake's PR representative was being framed in a way that didn't match the full reality of the situation. After raising questions about these inconsistencies, he was no longer part of the publication. His story highlights the massive pressure PR teams put on journalists to ensure only one side of the story ever sees the light of day.
Shay was featured in the It Ends With Us trailer. Blake texted, "I have never felt more like Khaleesi. I have dragons, except my dragons are bred with Cersei herself." And Taylor goes, "I'm just picturing you muttering Dracarys," and then I fire off those texts.
When the judge finally dismissed the bulk of her claims, Blake didn't take the hint. Instead, she doubled down on Instagram with a statement that many found completely tone deaf. She ignored the major legal loss and instead focused on the minor claims that were left, telling her fans she was grateful for the process. She then coined the phrase digital violence, claiming that the backlash she was receiving online was a form of real-world abuse. Megyn Kelly mocked this immediately, pointing out the irony of a multimillionaire who uses shell companies to sue normal people, claiming that she is the one being victimized by the public.
What Blake Lively says in a text message, that she too has her dragons, Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift, that's again believed to be the other person, and that they are powerful advocates for her. And while it seems to be said like, I'm so lucky that I have them as great storytellers to help me rewrite this script.
The core of the issue is a complete lack of respect for the creative process. Blake bragged in a magazine interview that there wasn't a single part of the movie she didn't touch or control. While she framed this as being a hard-working professional, it revealed that she had zero respect for the people actually hired to do those jobs. She viewed the director as a lower-level employee who was simply there to facilitate her vision. When Justin Baldoni tried to actually do his job as the director, she viewed it as a personal attack. It's a classic case of an actor's ego growing so large that it consumes the entire production.
Blake Lively has got a bit of a God complex. She's texting Justin Baldoni about how She sees herself as Khaleesi from Game of Thrones, mother.
The public is clearly exhausted by being gaslit by wealthy Hollywood elites. Megyn Kelly's takedown resonated so deeply because it gave voice to the frustration people feel when they see power being used to silence the truth. For months, the narrative was controlled by high-priced crisis management teams, but those teams couldn't stop the facts from coming out in court. People are tired of the fake smiles and the carefully crafted Instagram posts that hide a reality of bullying and intimidation. The House of Cards is falling apart because the public has finally decided to look behind the curtain and see who is really pulling the strings.
Interview where there's a Gossip Girl panel interview, and she makes a joke about Leighton Meester having been born in a cage, because Leighton Meester's mom was in prison when she gave birth to Leighton Meester. Oh, yeah.
That's
like, wow.
Who else didn't want to act in a cage?
Well, the breastfeeding trailer incident remains the most damning example of the entire saga. It was the centerpiece of the narrative that Justin Baldoni was a predator who didn't respect boundaries. By making such a serious accusation, Blake was playing with fire, knowing it could end a career instantly in the current climate. But the text message proved it was a complete fabrication. When Megyn Kelly highlighted this, she wasn't just talking about a movie set. She was talking about the integrity of the truth. When you lie about something that serious, you lose the right to be seen as a victim in any other part of the story.
Blake has not suffered anything like that, and we all know it. So she took her mother's alleged experience to have like stolen valor, for herself. Like, my poor mom. Okay, it's not you, it's allegedly your mom. And we all know what you're doing. You're trying to cast yourself with the basking of the Me Too, glow of comfort and sorrow and support from your fellow women and others who are here. And you're a glommer. You're a faker. You've undermined any Me Too claims that are out there because people are more skeptical of them when they have liars like...
What happens next will be a test for the entire industry. If Blake Lively thinks she can just pivot and wait for this to blow over, she might be mistaken. The legal battle is still ongoing for the remaining minor claims, but the damage to her reputation is likely permanent. People now see the dragons for what they are, tools of intimidation. They see the shell companies, the faked lawsuits, and the history of mean girl behavior. The moment someone with the resources of Megyn Kelly decided to stand her ground, the intimidation tactics stopped working. It turns out that dragons aren't so scary when someone is willing to fight back.
Actually, what happened was I was gaslit and made to feel like I was the problem, blamed and ostracized. This is not an archaic problem that no one's facing. This is continuing.
Justin Baldoni has remained relatively quiet throughout the worst of the attacks, letting the evidence speak for itself. While Blake was launching PR campaigns and filing lawsuits, he was reportedly receiving support from those who actually knew what happened on set. The contrast between the two could not be more clear. One side used every weapon in their arsenal to destroy a reputation, while the other side waited for the truth to come out in a court of law. It's a reminder that even in Hollywood, you can't hide the truth forever behind a wall of money and famous friends. The judge's ruling was just the beginning of the end.
The headlines and all of the feminist outrage is even better. And obviously, we knew that this would happen, but Blake and her team are actively pivoting their stories, hoping that we forget the real reason why she sued him in.
Ultimately, this scandal has exposed the dark side of celebrity influence. It shows how fame can be used to bypass the law, manipulate the media, and silence ordinary voices. But it also shows that there is a limit. Megyn Kelly's relentless focus on the facts has stripped away the glamour and revealed a very ugly reality of bullying and deception. Blake Lively may have tried to cast herself as the hero of her own story, but the world is finally seeing her as the villain. The dragons have been grounded, the shell companies have been exposed, and the truth is finally taking center stage. It's a new day in Hollywood, and the elites are finally being held accountable.